Okay,
Yeah.
so I wanted to get into the real good stuff. How did you design the very first lightsaber?
So this one eluded me, I have to say. I kept looking through my junk and bits and pieces and everything, and I couldn't find anything. And I knew I didn't have time to make it. And it actually came about because of Luke's binoculars, the bino bins, as they're called. I had some broken down camera bits, a Umig and a stills camera that had a flip up lens on the viewing on the back. And again, with super glue, I stuck them all together, and I thought, well, this will work, but I need to make it look like binoculars. So I went to buy 2 lenses, cheap ones, and stuck them with super glue on the front. And while I was in it's called Brunnings, and a friend of ours managed it, David French. I bought these things and I said, David, have you got any? I've got to make this weapon. I'm not sure what yet, but do you have anything? And David, and in the documentary I'm just finishing now called Galaxy Built on Hope, I've actually interviewed David French about all of this story, so his side of it. But he says he remembers when I came in the store and asked for this. He showed me these boxes that were under a shelf at the back, and said, go and have a look in there and see what you can find. Well, the first box I pulled out, I opened the tissue paper, and there were the Graflex handles, like the one on the screen here, which were, I'd found the Holy Grail. I mean, I just saw this, and it was exactly what I'd imagined. I had, I'd studied mythology like George, and I knew a lot, and my favorite at the time was the King Arthur legend, which you remember because of Excalibur. That was the power in the sword. And I kind of knew I've got to find something that has this gravitas, because this is a weapon of the Jedis. And if Star Wars works, that lightsaber is going to be laser sword. It was called in those days, by the way, from the script. And so I thought, and there it was. So I got 3 of them, raced back to the studios and fiddled about, tried different things, and then I had the T-strip left over from the Sterling blasters. I actually tried 6, and it looked okay, but then I thought, I can fit 7, so I put 7 of those, stuck it on, and I'd broken down a Texas Instrument calculator to look inside what was there, and I liked the bubble strip, which is what I stuck inside the grip, because that was the only bit I didn't like, and thought, wow, I think I've got it. And called George again, called him over to my room, and George held it and smiled, and that was it. It went into the system. Then once it was then kind of approved, then he said, the only thing I need to do is hang it on Luke's belt in the desert. So I only had a basic pliers and a screwdriver and boxes of super glue. So I had an assistant, Roger Shaw, who was a metal sculptor. He had a toolbox, so I sent it to him, and he put on the D-ring on the end. And then in the discussions about the blade, no one knew really how to do it. I had done some art kind of work that we had for demonstrations and for exhibitions, and we painted front projection paint, and it glowed. So I suggested one day this might work, and then they said, oh, go and do it. So there's a registered meeting actually with the special effects boys where I went down and explained to her what I wanted. The director of photography, Gil Taylor, immediately dissed it, said that won't work, and I don't want it. It'll upset the lighting in my sets. You can't do it. George overrode him and said, Roger, go and do it. So I did. The special effects boys drilled out the end of my Graflex and put a little motor in there that held a wooden dowel. And then he did something clever, or it was accident, but it was tiny bit out of center, and it vibrated as well as spinning. and yeah, it gave a glow on the set. You can see it in the fight scenes, backstage stuff or rehearsal. I think it's on YouTube, and it was enough for them to rotoscope afterwards and build the light blade as it should have been. But that was hand painting each frame of the film, rotoscoping. That was the only way to do it in those days. And so
insane.
that was born. That the first one was born. And we asked David French. It's an interesting story. We asked him afterwards what happened then after Roger took those three, and that he said, I got a call saying, do you have any more of these? Now, David, this Graflex camera was the press camera of the day. Every press in the world used it. It worked, and it was really good. So he had a lot of them. And they said, have you got any more? And he said, yes, how many do you want? And he agreed to give them 30 handles. So, as he said, 33 of the Graflexes went to the studio. And then they said, how much did you get for them, for all 33? And he said, £850. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And afterwards, David always says, I completely wrecked his business because he's still renting them out. He said, I can't get any more now. They're all like stupid prices. Every fan wants them. So there we are.
How did you design Vader's lightsaber?
That one, like I'd done the weapons, I wanted to make that one look like the Death Star. So it should have that kind of cold, engineered feel. So they actually used the basis, my Graflex handle as a basis, but then the effects boys, they actually made up the end. So it looked like it was specifically designed and engineered. I thought that was a better way to go with that, because Obi-Wan Kenobi's we had to do, and that one I thought, he's an ancient mystic. He's timeless. He's lives in the desert, and he's like much more of a kind of earthy, organic feel than even Luke's one. So part of the scrap junk piles, there was a thing called a rifle grenade. And it was a grenade that had a pole on the end, and you could put it in a rifle and fire it, so they could fire the grenades much further. And that was the basis of it. There's a bit of my Graflex in there. There was a piece of a Derwent jet engine that we broken down from the jet engines that fitted. I mean, whatever you put together to work.
Yes.
And there's a bit of an old machine gun in there. The funny thing is, on the end, what just happened to look right was a faucet, what we call taps. I was with David West Reynolds. David West Reynolds wrote the Star Wars Dictionary. He was eventually hired by Lucasfilm, became a good friend. I was with him this year at an exhibition down in America. And then he said, oh, by the way, I've always wanted to ask you this. Was your tap on a hot or cold? Because he'd put on, I think, a hot on his. He still had the cap on the end. And I said, David, I would never, ever make a lightsaber that the audience would think, oh, yeah, Obi-Wan must have gone to the tap shop and got one.
Dude, that's so crazy. I never knew that Obi-Wan's pommel was made out of a tap cap.
Yeah, and I took the end off it, the cap with the hot or cold symbols on it, and so it's empty at the end. You can see there's something going on in there. I thought that was a really funny story. Then I realized there's so many debates. Was it hot or was it cold?
That's something we could get into. Jedi business, go back to your drinks.
Yeah. So there we are. That was his story too. That was the only three I had to do.
So I didn't know that Obi-Wan's... Yeah, I didn't know that Obi-Wan's part of it was made from a like shower knob.
No, it's a tap. It's a basic water tap.
Sorry. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, but I've always known that it was made out of a grenade grip.
Yeah, that's there, but there's all these different bits in it. There's a funny story, actually. I was reading it the other day, but one of the he's the most known maker of replicas. He could not find those taps anymore, he happened to be in London, and he went to a Mexican restaurant, and there it was on the bathroom. Do you know what he did? He realized he couldn't go and ask for it or take it or steal it. So he went to a plumber's, bought a tap that would work, the top, went back to the restaurant, took the tap off that he wanted and stuck another one on it and never told anybody. So, see, I love these stories. I just think this is Star Wars, you know.